Commander Silovac's 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he studied the holographic projection. The blue-green planet rotated slowly in the center of the observation deck, surrounded by tactical overlays highlighting military installations and fleet movements. His slender fingers adjusted the magnification, zooming in on the Pacific Ocean, where a human naval exercise was underway. "Most peculiar," he murmured, his translator converting the clicks and whistles of his native language into standardized consortium speech. "They expend such resources on oceanic warfare when space clearly represents the ultimate high ground." Science Officer Nelbrax floated closer, her gas bladders pulsing gently in the ship's artificial gravity. The species profile indicates they evolved from persistence hunters. Perhaps this explains their fixation on projecting force across vast distances. The hologram shifted to display a human aircraft carrier battle group. The massive vessel at the center dwarfed its escorts, its flat top bristling with aircraft preparing for launch exercises. Silovac had observed 17 other pre-FTL civilizations during his 3-century career with the consortium's contact division, but none had developed such specialized military vessels before achieving spaceflight. "Mark the time interval," he instructed the ship's computer. The hologram highlighted as fighter jets launched in precise 30-second increments. Their launch efficiency rivals our own atmospheric tactical craft, yet they achieved this without gravitic assistance or neural synchronization technology. Their compartmentalized command structure should make such coordination impossible, Nelbrax observed, her sensory tendrils waving in confusion. Each vessel operates semi-autonomously. Each aircraft has its own pilot making individual decisions. The efficiency should degrade exponentially. Silovac manipulated the display again, bringing up historical data on Earth's naval development. They had centuries to refine these systems. "Look here, wooden vessels with sail propulsion engaging in complex formations. Even their primitive iterations demonstrated tactical sophistication." The briefing chimes sounded, indicating the arrival of strategic analyst Pelivor. The stocky, chitin-plated officer stomped into the observation deck, mandibles clicking irritably. "The threat assessment algorithms have completed their analysis, Commander," he announced, transferring data to the main display. "The results are concerning." The hologram shifted to display a probability matrix. Gailovac's inner eyelids fluttered rapidly as he processed the information. "This suggests humans would pose a greater potential threat than 8 of our current consortium members if they achieved spaceflight independently," he noted. Yet the behavioral analysis indicates no immediate expansionist tendencies. "Their geographical fragmentation appears key," Pelivor explained, highlighting the political boundaries on the planet. "Unlike most species who unify before developing advanced technology, humans remain divided into competing nation-states. Their military technology evolved through competition with themselves." Nelbrax extended a data tendril to the console. "These aircraft carriers particularly concern me. The concept is alien to consortium thinking, dedicating such resources to a vessel that carries smaller vessels, which then conduct actual combat operations. Power projection," Silovac mused. "The ability to extend military influence far beyond one's borders. Most species develop this concept only after achieving FTL capability." He made his decision, straightening to his full 3-meter height. "Standard observation protocols are insufficient for this species. Humans represent both opportunity and potential concern. Their approach to naval warfare, particularly these carrier battle groups, demonstrates innovative thinking that could benefit the consortium. You're not suggesting direct contact." Pelvor's mandibles clicked rapidly in alarm. "The protocols for pre-FTL civilizations clearly state." "The protocols were established for typical developmental patterns," Stylovac interrupted. "There is nothing typical about humans and their warships. Signal the High Council with priority encryption. Recommend immediate reclassification of Earth as a special contact candidate." As his officers hurried to comply, Stylovac returned his gaze to the hologram. The aircraft carrier had completed its launch sequence and was now recovering aircraft with the same remarkable precision. "Fascinating primitives indeed," he whispered. "What will you teach us, I wonder?" The consortium vessel deactivated its cloaking field at precisely 800 Eastern Standard Time on a clear Tuesday morning. The massive ship, 3 kilometers of gleaming silver-blue alloy, materialized above Manhattan with deliberate slowness, allowing Earth's detection systems to register its presence gradually rather than triggering immediate panic. It didn't work. Within 17 minutes, every major network on the planet was broadcasting the image. Stock markets worldwide suspended trading as panic selling crashed servers. Religious leaders issued statements ranging from apocalyptic warnings to calls for peaceful welcome. In the White House Situation Room, the president stared at the feed with remarkable composure. "What are our options?" she asked the Joint Chiefs. Admiral Elena Castillo, commander of the United States Navy's Atlantic Fleet, studied the tactical display showing military assets rapidly repositioning worldwide. Chinese carriers were already at battle stations. Russian strategic forces had gone to their highest alert level. The Indian Navy was deploying at remarkable speed toward the Arabian Sea. "Madam President, I recommend we assume non-hostile intent," Castillo said, her voice carrying the calm confidence that had defined her 30-year naval career. "They could have appeared directly over a military installation or nuclear site if they wanted to provoke us. They appeared over our most populous city," the Air Force general countered. "They appeared over our most recognizable city," Castillo corrected. "The New York skyline is humanity's calling card. If you were making contact with a new species, wouldn't you aim for their equivalent of Times Square?" Aboard the consortium vessel, Commander Kylovac monitored Earth's response with growing interest. The tactical display showed military vessels altering course worldwide, converging toward defensive positions with efficiency that surprised even his experienced staff. "Their response time is remarkable," Strategy Officer Pelliver noted. "The Vrexians took 3 full cycles to mobilize a comparable percentage of their fleet when we initiated contact. Humans live in a state of perpetual readiness," Kylovac replied. "Their historical data indicates they've never achieved global peace. Some portion of their military is always on alert." The communications officer's appendages fluttered excitedly. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission. Multiple formats, including basic mathematical sequences and electromagnetic pulses consistent with their binary computer language. Their first instinct is to communicate, not flee or attack," Kylovac noted with approval. "Promising." The translation matrix processed the message quickly. A formal greeting, followed by a surprising proposition. With the visitor's consent to a meeting aboard the aircraft carrier U.S. Gerald R. Ford, currently positioning 200 kilometers off the eastern seaboard. Nelbrax's gas bladders expanded in alarm. "They wish us to board one of their warships. Is this a primitive show of force?" Kylovac studied the specifications of the vessel being transmitted alongside the invitation. The carrier represented the pinnacle of human naval engineering, nuclear-powered, housing over 75 aircraft, and staffed by 4,500 personnel. The message emphasized that the ship's commanding officer, Captain Miguel Santos, would be joined by Admiral Elena Castillo and a diplomatic delegation with full authority to represent Earth's nations. Not a show of force, Kylovac decided. A gesture of transparency. They're inviting us to examine their military capabilities directly. He activated the ship-wide communication system. Prepare a diplomatic shuttle. Select 12 representatives from various disciplines. We will accept their invitation. As the shuttle departed the mothership 3 hours later, Earth's citizens watched through countless cameras and devices. Aboard the U.S. Gerald R. Ford, Admiral Castillo straightened her dress uniform and addressed the hastily assembled honor guard. "Remember," she told them, "we're not just representing the United States Navy. As of this moment, we represent humanity. Let's show our visitors what that means. The consortium shuttle settled onto the massive flight deck of the U.S. Gerald R. Ford with barely a sound, its advanced propulsion system leaving no scorch marks on the reinforced surface. Ambassador Trellnar stood at the shuttle's viewport, compound eyes taking in the organized chaos of the carrier's deck. Flight crews in different colored jerseys moved with practiced efficiency, while armed Marines formed a perimeter around the landing area. Such primitive projectile weapons, murmured Science Officer Nelbrax, observing the Marines' rifles. Yet their formation is tactically sound. Remember the contact protocols, Commander Hylovac reminded his team. No sudden movements. Maintain translator fields at all times. And show appropriate respect. These humans have arranged this meeting with remarkable speed. The shuttle's doors parted silently. Ambassador Trellnar stepped out first, his 7-foot insectoid form temporarily frozen as the full sensory experience of the carrier deck hit him. The smell of jet fuel, the constant vibration of machinery, the roar of the ocean below, and most surprisingly, the disciplined but unmistakably emotional atmosphere of the human crew. Admiral Elena Castillo stepped forward from the receiving line, a picture of composure in her dress whites. Ambassador, on behalf of the people of Earth, welcome aboard the U.S. Gerald R. Ford. Her translator, hastily programmed with consortium linguistic patterns extracted from their initial transmissions, conveyed her words in approximations the aliens could understand. Trellnar performed the formal greeting gesture of his species, 4 arms moving in precise patterns. The consortium extends peaceful greetings to humanity. We thank you for this unprecedented invitation. The formal introductions complete, Admiral Castillo began the planned tour of the vessel. As the delegation moved below decks, Commander Hylovac noticed something unexpected. The alien party was attracting surprisingly little attention from the crew. Sailors acknowledged the visitors respectfully but returned immediately to their duties. Your personnel seem remarkably undistracted by our presence, Hylovac observed. Admiral Castillo smiled slightly. On a carrier, focus is a matter of survival. One moment of distraction on the flight deck can cost lives. The delegation entered the hangar bay, where fighter jets were undergoing maintenance. What struck the aliens immediately was not the aircraft themselves. Their design was predictably aerodynamic, but the complex ecosystem of humans working on them. Technicians called to each other across the vast space, exchanging tools and information with practiced ease. How many specialists maintain each flying machine? Asked Nelbrax. For an F-35C, the ratio is approximately 15 maintenance personnel per aircraft. Captain Santos, the ship's commanding officer, explained. But that doesn't include the support staff who maintain the support staff. Inefficient, Ambassador Trellnar remarked. Perhaps, Admiral Castillo acknowledged. But resilient. If we lose personnel, others can adapt to fill their roles. Specialized efficiency creates vulnerable single points of failure. The tour continued through living quarters, where the aliens observed sailors relaxing in recreational spaces, studying in small classrooms, even tending to a small hydroponic garden. This is a warship, Trellnar asked, genuine confusion in his translator's output. These spaces serve no combat function. Admiral Castillo calls it the humanity factor, Captain Santos explained. A ship deploys for months at a time. We've learned that maintaining the crew's connection to what they're fighting for, home, education, growth, even beauty, makes them more effective warriors, not less. The delegation paused at the threshold of the medical bay. Inside, a full surgical team was conducting a training exercise, their movements as coordinated as any flight deck operation. Your war vessel contains healing centers, Hylovac asked, blinking rapidly in surprise. Admiral Castillo's expression remained neutral, but her voice carried quiet pride. Commander, every aspect of this vessel serves two purposes: to project power when necessary, and to preserve life. Both the lives of our crew and, when possible, even our adversaries. We call it the paradox of strength. For the first time since the delegation had boarded, Ambassador Trellnar was completely silent, all four of his arms perfectly still. Lieutenant Commander Reyes Jackson ran his hand along the reactor shielding, explaining the redundant cooling systems to master engineers VX with the practiced ease of someone who had conducted hundreds of tours. What made this one different, of course, was that his audience had 6 limbs and skin that shimmered with bioluminescent patterns. The design philosophy is simple, Jackson explained. We assume component failure will happen, especially in combat situations, so we build systems that can continue functioning even when damaged. Zvex's translator produced a sound like humming glass. Fascinating inefficiency. Consortium vessels operate at near-perfect reliability. We seldom experience component failures. What happens when you do? Jackson asked. The alien engineer's skin patterns dimmed slightly. Cascading system failures are common. Our design philosophy prioritizes optimal function over redundancy. Jackson nodded. Different environments, different solutions. Your vessels evolved in the vacuum of space. Ours had to withstand storms, enemy fire, and unpredictable ocean conditions simultaneously. He led the alien engineer to a simulation console and activated the damage control program. This is our standard training scenario. Multiple torpedo hits, flooding in 3 compartments, fire on the flight deck, and primary power loss. The simulation unfolded, showing crew members responding to the crisis, rerouting systems, sealing compartments, and maintaining combat capability despite catastrophic damage. You can lose 60% of your vessel's systems and still maintain combat operations. Zvex's appendages moved rapidly over the console, recording the simulation data. Jackson grinned. Navy tradition, sir. The ship fights as long as any part remains afloat. Meanwhile, on the carrier's bridge, Admiral Castillo and Ambassador Trellnar stood before a tactical display showing the current positioning of Earth's naval forces. Your vessels maintain such distances from each other, observed Tactical Officer Pelrivex, studying the formation patterns. Our combat doctrine emphasizes concentrated force. Concentrated targets, you mean, replied Captain Santos. If one missile can disable multiple vessels, separation becomes a survival tactic. Admiral Castillo activated a historical simulation showing the evolution of carrier warfare. Early in our naval history, we learned that projection of force doesn't require physical proximity. Aircraft carriers allow us to influence events hundreds of miles from our actual position. The aliens watched as virtual aircraft launched from the simulated carrier, striking targets far beyond visual range. Ambassador Trellnar's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep consideration among his species. This approach shaped your transition to space warfare concepts, I presume, he asked. It formed the foundation, Castillo acknowledged, though we're still adapting those principles for 3-dimensional space operations. Pelrivex made a gesture indicating respectful disagreement. Our tactical simulations suggest that space warfare requires concentrated force. Dispersion leads to defeat in most scenarios. Castillo smiled slightly. Most scenarios built on consortium assumptions, I'd wager. Human military history is filled with forces that lost because they didn't question their fundamental assumptions. In a nearby conference room, cultural exchange continued on multiple fronts. Consortium xenobiologists shared data on the 17 known spacefaring species, while human anthropologists offered insights into Earth's diverse cultures. Science officer Nelbarax found herself particularly intrigued by the concept of naval tradition. Your military vessels carry customs spanning centuries, she noted, examining digital scans of ceremonial swords, bells, and other naval artifacts. These serve no practical function. Captain Santos, who had joined this part of the discussion, shook his head. They serve perhaps the most practical function of all. They remind each sailor they're part of something larger than themselves, a continuum of service stretching back through generations. Nelbrax's translation matrix struggled with the concept. You believe connection to your ancestors improves combat performance. We know it does, Santos replied simply. A sailor who understands they're continuing a proud tradition will persevere when technology and training reach their limits. We've won battles we should have lost because of it. By day's end, both species had filled databases with observations, each recognizing they had encountered not just new technology, but entirely different philosophical approaches to warfare, exploration, and survival. Admiral Castillo had never imagined she would stand on the command deck of an alien flagship. 6 months after first contact, the sight of Earth through the vast transparent viewport still took her breath away. The blue-green planet hung against the blackness of space, peaceful from this distance. Your world looks serene from orbit, observed Xilovac, now wearing the formal insignia of diplomatic liaison for Earth affairs. One would never suspect the complex military history that shaped your species. Distance changes perspective, Castillo replied. She had grown accustomed to the commander's communication style. Direct, but with subtle undertones that her translator occasionally missed. Indeed. Xilovac gestured toward a holographic display dominating the center of the command deck. Distance is precisely what concerns the High Council. The display activated, showing a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. The consortium's territory glowed in peaceful blue, spanning approximately 1/8 of the galactic disk. Various other colors indicated allied or neutral species. A pulsing red zone at the outer rim immediately drew Castillo's attention. The Vrax Dominion, Xilovac explained. His 4 eyes narrowed, outer membranes flickering in what Castillo had learned to recognize as concern. They've expanded aggressively for the past 70 Earth years. The display zoomed in, showing planetary systems surrounded by red markers. Each marker represents a civilization that no longer exists. Xilovac continued. The Vrax assimilate useful technology and resources. They eliminate resistance. Castillo studied the expansion pattern. Their territory forms a wedge. They're maintaining a narrow front rather than expanding in all directions. You've noticed what our strategic analysts initially missed, Xilovac said. He activated a privacy field around them, the slight shimmer indicating that their conversation was now protected from even consortium surveillance. Admiral, I must speak with complete candor. The consortium approached Earth specifically because of your warships. Castillo raised an eyebrow. Our technology is primitive compared to yours. Your technology, yes. Your tactical thinking is not. Xilovac manipulated the display to show Vrax attack formations. The Vrax fight like apex predators, overwhelming force applied with singular focus. The consortium evolved primarily from cooperative species. Despite our advanced technology, we struggle to counter their aggression effectively. The display shifted to show a comparison of Earth's historical naval battles alongside consortium space engagements. Most species develop significant military capability only after achieving spaceflight. Humans built remarkable combat vessels while still bound to your oceans. You learned to project power across vast distances without the advantage of faster-than-light travel. Understanding dawned in Castillo's eyes. You need our perspective. We need warriors who understand predatory thinking, Xilovac confirmed. The Vrax operate on principles alien to consortium strategy, but familiar to human military history. Your carrier battle groups evolved to deliver overwhelming force at a distance while maintaining defensive capability. This concept alone has caused significant revision in our tactical doctrines. Castillo studied the Vrax attack patterns more carefully. Their formations remind me of wolf pack tactics used by German submarines in Earth's Second World War. They concentrate force against isolated targets, then disperse before counterattack. Xilovac's translator emitted a sound like quiet bells, the equivalent of surprise. You recognized their methodology in seconds. Our analysts required months to identify the pattern. The admiral turned from the display to face the alien directly. What exactly are you proposing, Commander? A formal military alliance, Xilovac replied without hesitation. The High Council has authorized me to offer Earth-protected status within the consortium, with accelerated technology sharing focused on defensive and propulsion systems. In exchange, we request human tactical advisors be integrated immediately into our defense forces. And if Earth declines, Silovak gestured toward the expanding red zone on the display. Then we face the Vraks alone. And when they eventually reach your solar system, you will face them alone as well. The consortium's simulation chamber hummed with energy, its 50-meter spherical interior transformed into a perfect replica of the contested Procyon system. Holographic planets, moons, and asteroid fields floated in precise astronomical arrangement, while virtual fleets waited at strategic positions. Admiral Castillo stood on the observer platform with her team of naval strategists, hand-picked veterans from Earth's various maritime powers. Captain Wei Chen of the Chinese Navy studied the tactical display with intense focus. Commander Irina Petrova from the Russian fleet made rapid calculations on her datapad. Captain Mohammed Abiola of the Nigerian Navy watched the consortium officers with careful attention, noting their pre-simulation rituals. "The parameters are unusual," Chen observed quietly. "We're outnumbered 3-1, with inferior weapon range." "Just like the Battle of Lake Gulf," Castillo replied with a slight smile. "Overwhelming force doesn't guarantee victory if your opponent thinks differently than you expect." Across the chamber, High Commander Edelvox, the consortium's senior military leader, conferred with his tactical staff. The tall, crystalline being occasionally glanced toward the humans with an expression that Castillo had learned to read as skepticism. "They've arranged this simulation to prove their superiority," whispered Commander Petrova. "Classic psychological warfare. Demonstrate overwhelming force to encourage capitulation. Or they genuinely want to see how we approach an impossible scenario," Captain Abiola countered. "Remember, their species evolved through cooperation, not competition. They may not understand the concept of a no-win scenario." A chime signaled the beginning of the exercise. The holographic battlefield came alive as both teams took their positions at the control interfaces. Unlike physical war games, this simulation operated in real time, with each decision having immediate consequences. Castillo opened with an unexpected move. Rather than consolidating her forces around the resource-rich central planet, the obvious defensive position, she scattered them in seemingly random formations throughout the system. "Sensor drones deployed in submarine picket line formation," she ordered. "Maintain silent running protocols until detection threshold is breached." Captain Chen coordinated the placement of mines in asteroid clusters, while Commander Petrova established carrier groups with frigate screens at strategic jump points. Captain Abiola prepared rapid response squadrons modeled after destroyer wolfpacks. From the consortium command center, High Commander Etelvox watched with growing confusion. "The human forces have dispersed without apparent strategy," he noted to his senior tactical officer. "Proceed with standard containment protocol." The Vraks attack force, controlled by consortium tactical AIs programmed with historical Vraks behavior patterns, moved into the system with overwhelming force concentrated at the center. Their sensors detected the scattered human fleet elements but classified them as non-threatening due to their isolation. "They've taken the bait," Castillo murmured. "Execute Operation Broken Anvil." The simulation erupted into coordinated chaos. Human sensor drones suddenly activated, providing targeting data across the system. Mines detonated in carefully planned sequences, channeling the Vraks fleet into prepared kill zones. Carrier groups launched fighter squadrons in seemingly chaotic patterns that resolved into perfect attack formations as they converged from multiple vectors. Most surprisingly to the consortium observers, Castillo deliberately sacrificed valuable assets as tactical diversions. She abandoned a heavily damaged cruiser, allowing the Vraks to commit significant forces to destroying it, while more important vessels maneuvered to advantageous positions. 3 hours later, the simulation concluded. The holographic battlefield showed the remnants of the Vraks fleet in retreat, despite their initial numerical and technological advantage. The human team had suffered significant losses, but had maintained control of the system's critical resources. High Commander Etelvox approached Admiral Castillo, his crystalline form glowing with what she had learned was intense emotional response. "Your carrier group tactics adapted for space," he began, his translator struggling to convey his astonishment. "The willingness to sacrifice assets as part of a larger strategy. The submarine-inspired sensor deployments. We would never have conceived such approaches." Castillo nodded respectfully. "Different evolutionary paths, Commander. Your species developed technology that outpaces ours by centuries. But humans have been fighting predators, including each other, since before we had written language." Etelvox turned to his staff and issued a command that made them visibly react. "The consortium formally requests immediate integration of human tactical advisors into our defense forces," he announced, "not as consultants, but as equal strategic partners." Earth's orbital shipyard had never seen anything like it. The U.S. Gerald R. Ford floated in a massive construction cradle, surrounded by a swarm of both human and alien engineers. Sections of the carrier's hull had been carefully removed, revealing the interior systems now being integrated with consortium technology. Captain Wei Chen, newly appointed commanding officer of what would soon be rechristened the CSS Ford, combined species ship, watched the process from an observation platform. The promotion had come as a surprise. His performance in the simulation had impressed both human and consortium leadership. "Remarkable, isn't it?" Admiral Castillo said, joining him at the viewport. 6 months ago, we were conducting routine exercises in the South China Sea. Now we're retrofitting an aircraft carrier with faster-than-light technology. Below them, a team of engineers guided a gleaming cylinder into position near the ship's nuclear reactors. The consortium FTL drive was surprisingly compact, barely larger than one of the carrier's jet engines. "The integration is proceeding faster than expected," Chen noted. "The consortium engineers seem particularly impressed with our power distribution systems. They're learning as much from us as we are from them," Castillo replied. "Their technology is centuries ahead of ours, but their thinking about redundancy and combat damage control is surprisingly limited." On the carrier's flight deck, Master Engineer ZX supervised the installation of shield generator nodes along the vessel's perimeter. Lieutenant Commander Jackson stood beside the alien, their working relationship having evolved into something resembling friendship during the months of collaboration. "Your damage control teams," ZX said, multiple limbs adjusting a calibration device. "They train to repair systems while under attack." "That's their primary function," Jackson confirmed. "Every sailor on board is trained in basic damage control. In combat, we assume systems will fail and prepare accordingly." "Fascinating perspective," the alien engineer replied. "The consortium designs systems not to fail at all. We're beginning to recognize the limitations of that approach." Throughout the ship, similar exchanges occurred as human and alien specialists worked side by side. In the Tactical Control Center, consortium weapons officers learned about Earth naval doctrine while installing advanced targeting systems. In engineering spaces, human technicians studied alien power management protocols while teaching emergency repair techniques. The ship's medical bay had undergone the most dramatic transformation. Consortium regeneration technology now supplemented traditional surgical equipment, while human doctors trained alien medical specialists in triage and field medicine. Concepts the consortium had never needed to develop with their advanced healing technology. "Your species plans for failure," ZX observed, gesturing toward a damage control drill taking place nearby. "Ours always assumed perfect function. We're beginning to understand why your warships evolved so differently from ours." On the bridge, Captain Chen reviewed the latest intelligence reports with growing concern. Vrak's activity near the New Hope colony had increased dramatically in the past week. What had been scheduled as a routine shakedown cruise for the newly upgraded vessel was rapidly evolving into a potential combat deployment. "The Vraks are testing our response times," Commander Irina Petrova noted, pointing to movement patterns on the tactical display. "They're probing for weaknesses before committing to a full assault." Admiral Castillo studied the report with narrowed eyes. How soon can the Ford be ready for deployment? The primary systems are operational, Captain Chen replied. FTL drive is at 87% efficiency. Shield generators are online but untested in combat conditions. Weapons integration is complete for the main batteries. Castillo made her decision. Accelerate the final integration checks. I want the Ford ready to depart within 48 hours. The crew is still adjusting to the new systems, Chen cautioned. We haven't completed the full training protocols. Neither have the Vraks, Castillo replied with a grim smile. They'd never encountered a human carrier battle group operating with consortium technology. Sometimes uncertainty is a tactical advantage. As engineers completed the final connections between human and alien systems, the CSS Ford prepared for a shakedown cruise that was rapidly transforming into humanity's first interstellar combat mission. Red alert klaxons blared throughout the CSS Ford as it emerged from FTL at the edge of the New Hope system. Captain Chen stood on the bridge, his face illuminated by the tactical displays showing a nightmare scenario. The Vraks battle fleet had already begun orbital bombardment of the colony, their wedge-shaped vessels arranged in classic attack formation. 17 Vraks warships detected, reported Lieutenant Commander Sato, her fingers dancing across the sensor controls. Colony defensive shields at 23% and failing. Consortium reinforcements? Chen asked. 3 hours at minimum. Commander Petrova replied grimly. We're the only defense New Hope has. Chen studied the tactical situation. The Ford's battle group consisted of just the carrier and 2 consortium light cruisers. They were outnumbered nearly 6-1, with the Vraks ships individually outmassing their vessels. Conventional engagement is suicide, observed Senior Tactical Officer Mesri, the consortium liaison assigned to the Ford. The logical approach is to withdraw and await reinforcements. Logical, but unacceptable, Chen replied. He keyed the ship-wide communication system. All hands, this is the captain. We are implementing Operation Coral Sea. Throughout the vessel, both human and consortium crew members moved with practiced efficiency. In the hangar bay, fighter pilots sprinted to their craft, a mix of upgraded F-35s and consortium interceptors. In engineering, Lieutenant Commander Jackson diverted power to the newly installed shield generators while preparing the damage control teams. Navigator, plot course for the gas giant's upper atmosphere, Chen ordered. Medical, prepare for casualties. Tactical, launch fighter screen in pattern Bravo 6. The massive carrier accelerated toward the system's largest planet, its escort vessels moving into defensive positions. To the observing Vraks, the maneuver appeared suicidal. The human vessel was moving away from the colony it supposedly came to defend. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Vraks command ship, reported Communications Officer Okafor. They're laughing. Let them, Chen replied. Consortium vessels historically retreat when outgunned. They're expecting us to follow the same playbook. As the Ford reached the gas giant's upper atmosphere, Chen gave the order that would forever change interstellar warfare. Execute randomized launch pattern. Implement submarine warfare protocols. The carrier's launch bays opened, but instead of the coordinated fighter deployment the Vraks expected, the Ford launched its aircraft in seemingly chaotic patterns. Fighters disappeared into the planet's swirling clouds, using the atmospheric interference to mask their signatures. Meanwhile, the 2 consortium escort vessels broke formation, taking positions on opposite sides of the planet. To the Vraks observers, it appeared that the human-led battle group was in disarray, its components fleeing in different directions. The Vraks commander, sensing easy victory, directed half his fleet to pursue the carrier while continuing bombardment with the remaining vessels. It was exactly what Chen had anticipated. They've taken the bait, he reported. Phase 2. The Ford emerged from the planet's far side, performing a slingshot maneuver that accelerated it to speeds that strained even the advanced consortium inertial dampeners. As the carrier approached the colony, it launched its second fighter wave directly into the path of the bombarding Vraks vessels. Simultaneously, the escort vessels emerged from hiding positions within the planet's rings, attacking from vectors the Vraks had never thought to defend. From the gas giant's clouds, the first wave of fighters appeared, striking the pursuing Vraks vessels from behind. Classic pincer movement, Chen explained to the astonished consortium officers on his bridge. Admiral Nimitz used it at Midway in 1942. The Vraks made the same mistake the Japanese did. They divided their forces and lost their tactical cohesion. The battle raged for 3 intense hours. The Ford took heavy damage, losing shield generators and suffering hull breaches on multiple decks. But the damage control teams, trained in both human and consortium techniques, kept the vessel operational. As the last Vraks ship retreated from the system, the colony's governor transmitted on all frequencies. "We witnessed impossibility today, tactics no consortium strategist would ever conceive." 2 weeks later, in the consortium's grand hall on their homeworld, Admiral Castillo washed with pride as Captain Chen received the Order of the 17 Stars, the highest honor for non-consortium species. "We approached humans because their warships impressed us," High Commander Etelvox announced to the assembled dignitaries. "We now understand our error. It wasn't the vessels that made humans remarkable. It was the thinking behind them. Humanity developed warships not because they love conflict, but because they learned to thrive despite it. That perspective may save us all."